Your life is every Yakuza. The Yakuza doesn't recruit. It selects. And by the time they notice you, you've already built a resume in blood that most people couldn't stomach reading. You start as a chinpira, a street punk, a nobody with fast hands and a death wish in the neon-soaked alleys of Kabukicho. You're 17, maybe 19. You dropped out of school because school doesn't teach you how to survive when your father drinks the rent money, and your mother stopped coming home 3 years ago. The streets became your classroom. Violence became your diploma. You run collections for local loan sharks. You stand outside hostess clubs looking menacing enough that drunk salarymen don't cause problems. You deliver packages you don't open to addresses you don't remember. You learn the cardinal rule of the underworld before anyone teaches it to you. Don't ask questions. Don't remember faces. Don't exist. Your resume builds in broken knuckles and split lips. By 22, you've put 3 men in the hospital. One of them owed money to a man whose name you never learned. The other 2 looked at you wrong in a pachinko parlor. The third was self-defense. Mostly. You're good at this. The violence comes easy, like breathing, like blinking. And the men who matter have started to notice. One night, after you handle a situation involving a Chinese gambling ring encroaching on protected territory, a man in an expensive suit approaches you at a ramen stand. He doesn't introduce himself. He places a business card on the counter. No name, no company, just an address in Shinjuku and a time, tomorrow, 8 p.m. He leaves without ordering. You turn the card over. Blank. You pocket it anyway. You know what this is. Everyone in these streets knows what this is. The question isn't whether you'll go. The question is whether you're ready for what happens when you do. You're not ready. Nobody is. You go anyway. The address leads to a traditional wooden house hidden behind a modern office building. The kind of place you'd walk past 1,000 times without noticing. That's the point. Inside, 12 other young men sit in Caesar position on tatami mats. Knees folded, back straight. No one speaks. You take your place among them and wait. An hour passes. Then 2. Your legs go numb. A man next to you shifts his weight, and an older man in the corner makes a small mark in a notebook. The shifting man is gone by morning. You don't see him leave. You don't ask where he went. The selection lasts 3 weeks. They don't beat you. That would be too simple. Instead, they strip away every external support system you've ever built. No phone, no contact with the outside world. No explanation of what you're being tested for or how long it will last. The silence is the selection. You clean. You serve tea to men who don't acknowledge your existence. You stand in the rain for hours outside a restaurant while clan members eat and laugh inside. You sleep 4 hours a night on a thin mat in a room with no windows. You eat what they give you, when they give it, which isn't often. One night, they wake you at 3 a.m. A senior member hands you a knife and an address. He tells you a man at that address owes the clan money. He tells you to collect it. He doesn't tell you how much. He doesn't tell you what to do if the man refuses. He doesn't tell you what happens if you fail. You find the address. A small apartment above a dry cleaner. The man inside is 40, maybe 50. He looks at the knife in your hand and starts crying. He tells you about his daughter's medical bills. He tells you about his wife who left him. He tells you he'll have the money next week, he swears. Please, just 1 more week. You stand there. The knife in your hand. The man's sobbing, filling the apartment. And somewhere in your chest, something that used to feel like hesitation goes quiet forever. What you do next determines everything. Of the 13 candidates who started, 4 are accepted. You are one of 4. The ceremony is small and ancient. You kneel across from your new oyabun, your father within the clan. You each drink sake from the same cup, the sakazuki. When the cup is empty, your old life is empty. You belong to the family now. The family owns your loyalty, your labor, your future, and if necessary, your death. You feel nothing when it's over. Not relief, not pride. Just the quiet understanding that whatever comes next will cost more than what you just paid. 6 months as a wakashu. A new member, the lowest rank in the hierarchy you just joined. This is where they turn a street fighter into something the civilian world doesn't have a name for. You learn the businesses, the legitimate ones first: construction companies, real estate firms, talent agencies that manage pop idols and provide hostesses to high-end clubs. You learn how money moves through these channels like water through pipes, always flowing downhill toward the clan's accounts. Then you learn the other businesses, the ones that don't have offices or tax returns, protection money collected from every shop owner in a 6-block radius, gambling operations that run in basement rooms and private apartments, loan sharking at interest rates that would make a bank executive blush, drug routes that connect Yokohama's ports to distribution networks across Kanto. You learn the blade. Not sword fighting, this isn't a samurai movie. You learn how to use a knife in spaces where guns are too loud and fists are too slow. The tanto sits against your forearm, hidden under your sleeve. You practice drawing it until the motion is invisible. You practice cutting until your strikes are precise enough to disable without killing. Killing creates problems. Disability creates fear. Fear creates compliance. You learn the gun too, but guns are for emergencies. The Yakuza operates in a country with some of the strictest firearms laws on Earth. Every bullet you fire generates paperwork somewhere. Every shooting brings police attention that costs the clan money and political capital. The gun is a last resort. The blade is an art form. You learn tradecraft, how to follow a target through Shibuya's scramble crossing without being noticed, how to sit in a coffee shop for 4 hours without looking like you're waiting for someone, how to read a room, identify the exits, spot the undercover cops, sense the tension that precedes violence. You learn to wear a suit that costs 3 months of a salaryman's salary because appearance is armor, and the right appearance opens doors that force cannot breach. Your first real operation comes at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. A businessman who owns a chain of karaoke bars has stopped paying his protection fees. He thinks because he's connected to a city council member, the rules don't apply to him. Your team, you and 2 senior members, visits his home in Setagaya. Nice house, 2 cars in the driveway, a wife, 2 children asleep upstairs. You don't touch the family. That's not how this works. You sit the man down in his own living room and explain, very quietly, very calmly, what will happen to his businesses if payment doesn't resume. You describe the health code violations that inspectors will suddenly discover, the licensing issues that will emerge from nowhere, the labor disputes that will materialize, the fire that might accidentally destroy his flagship location. He pays. They always pay when you explain it right. Walking back to the car, the senior member nods at you. That's all. A nod. In this world, that's a standing ovation. You return to headquarters as the sun rises over Tokyo. You eat a convenience store bento in the break room and watch the morning news. A story about a pop idol's new single. A story about a political scandal. Nothing about the businessman in Setagaya. Nothing about you. That's the job. You solve problems that don't officially exist, and then you disappear back into the city like smoke. 3 years in the clan. You've risen to Shate, a younger brother. Still not senior, but no longer the one who gets sent to stand in the rain. You've been part of dozens of operations, collections, intimidations, the occasional enforcement action that required more than words. You've traveled to Osaka, Fukuoka, Nagoya, territories belonging to allied clans or disputed zones where your clan is expanding its influence. You've sat in rooms where men negotiated the division of entire industries while drinking tea from cups that cost more than cars. Your body tells the story, your mouth never will. A scar on your left forearm from a broken bottle in a Roppongi nightclub. 2 fingers on your right hand that don't bend properly anymore. A gift from a rival clan's enforcer in Yokohama. The tattoo that now covers your back and shoulders, a dragon emerging from waves. Each session of the Tabori needle, another layer of commitment inked into your skin. You've learned to read people the way other men read newspapers. The micro expressions that reveal deception. the subtle shift in posture that precedes attack, the particular quality of fear in someone's eyes that tells you they'll cooperate versus the defiance that tells you they'd rather die. You've been right every time. The margin for error is zero. More importantly, you've learned patience. The street punk who joined the clan 3 years ago wanted to solve every problem with speed and force. The veteran understands that the most dangerous weapon is time. Watching, waiting, building a complete picture before taking any action. You spend 11 days surveilling a corporate executive who has been feeding information to a rival clan. 11 days in rented apartments and parked cars and coffee shops within sight of his office, his home, his mistress's apartment in Meguro. You document his patterns, his security, his weaknesses. When the time comes, you don't even have to threaten him. You just show him the photographs, his wife, his children arriving at school, his mistress leaving her building. The color drains from his face and the information stops flowing. No violence, no raised voices, just the quiet demonstration of how completely his life has been observed. He transfers to a company in Singapore 3 weeks later. Problem solved. The clan's interests protected. And all it cost was 11 days of patience and a manila envelope of photographs. The senior members have started using a particular phrase when they talk about you. Shinrai Dekiru, someone who can be relied upon. In a world built on loyalty, there is no higher compliment. You're a Kyodai now, an older brother. You run your own crew, 4 Shatei and 2 Wakashu who answer to you. You're responsible for their training, their effectiveness, and their mistakes. Your territory is 3 blocks in Shinjuku. Not the famous part with the tourists and the neon signs, the back streets, the alleys where the real business happens. Every pachinko parlor, every hostess club, every massage place with services that aren't advertised. They all pay tribute to your crew, and your crew pays tribute to the clan. Territory isn't just geography. Territory is relationships. You know the mama-san who runs the best hostess club on your block. You know which police detective can be reasoned with and which one is a true believer who will never take money. You know the Chinese gang that operates 2 streets over, and you know exactly where your territory ends and theirs begins. And you know that both sides remember what happened the last time someone forgot. Leadership in the Yakuza doesn't look like leadership in a corporation. There are no motivational speeches, no performance reviews, no team-building retreats. Leadership looks like being the first one through the door when a situation goes wrong. Leadership looks like taking responsibility when a subordinate makes a mistake that costs the clan money. Leadership looks like visiting the widow of a Shatei who died in an operation and handing her an envelope thick enough to pay the rent for 2 years. You plan operations now. Intelligence comes from your network of informants. Hostesses who overhear conversations, bartenders who notice who's meeting with whom, low-level employees in rival organizations who need money more than they need loyalty. You turn this information into action, this target, this location, this time, these men, and then you execute. A rival clan has been running unlicensed gambling operations in neutral territory, skimming customers from your established games. 3 warnings have been ignored. The decision comes down from above. Send a message. You plan for 2 weeks. You identify the location of their main game. You map the entries and exits. You learn the rotation of their security. You wait for a night when the biggest players are present, when the room will be full of men who matter. Your crew hits the game at 1 a.m., 8 seconds from the door coming off its hinges to complete control of the room. Nobody dies. That's not the message. The message is the systematic destruction of everything in the room except the people. Tables overturned, cash scattered and then set on fire in the center of the room. The gaming equipment smashed with baseball bats while the rival clan's men are held at gunpoint. Forced to watch. You leave 1 man standing, a senior member of the rival organization. You hand him a single playing card, the ace of spades, and you tell him to deliver it to his boss. He'll understand what it means. The gambling operations in neutral territory shut down within 48 hours. Your clan's games see a 40% increase in traffic the following month. Message received. But you also know that messages create responses. Somewhere in the rival clan's headquarters, men are planning their reply. The cycle of action and reaction never stops. You've just added fuel to a fire that will burn long after you're gone. Your wife asks why you came home at 4 a.m. Business meeting ran late, you say. She stopped believing that excuse years ago, but she stopped asking follow-up questions around the same time. The distance between your life and hers grows wider every year, and neither of you acknowledges it, because acknowledging it would require decisions that both of you are afraid to make. The higher you climb, the less you recognize the man in the mirror. Shatigashira. Lieutenant, you oversee multiple crews now, managing territory that spans half a ward. 40 men answer to you directly, and their men answer to them. The math gets abstract at this level. You're responsible for the output of a small army. You've been in the clan for 10 years. Your body is a catalog of damage. The fingers on your right hand that don't bend. You've added a pinky tip sacrificed in Yubitsume after an operation went wrong 2 years ago. Your fault, technically. A subordinate made the mistake, but you accepted responsibility because that's what leaders do. The knife, the cutting board, the white cloth to wrap the severed piece before presenting it to your superior. The pain was secondary. The shame was the point. Your tattoos now cover you from neck to ankle. A full bodysuit, years of sessions with a traditional artist, the tabori needles tapping ink into your skin one dot at a time. Dragons and koi and cherry blossoms and waves. The imagery tells a story only the initiated can read. Every Yakuza who sees you undressed knows exactly where you stand, how long you've served, what you've endured. But the tattoos are also a prison. You can never enter a public bath, a swimming pool, a gym. Japanese society has made the irizumi a mark of the outcast. Even if you left the clan tomorrow, your skin would announce what you were for the rest of your life. You don't hold the knife anymore. You decide which throats it touches. A construction CEO needs a rival eliminated from a contract bid. A politician needs photographs to disappear. A tech executive needs a former employee in Taiwan to stop talking. They come to you in private rooms at restaurants where the staff knows not to remember faces. They wear suits as expensive as yours. They speak in euphemism and implication, never saying directly what they need. They don't have to. You both know why they're here. You nod. You make a call. Somewhere in the city, men start moving. 3 weeks later, the CEO gets his contract. The politician's opponent withdraws from the race. The employee in Taiwan has a sudden change of heart about speaking to journalists. Nobody asks how. Nobody wants to know. That's the service you provide. Problems that vanish without fingerprints. You've started losing people you care about. Not to violence, though that happens too, but to the weight of this life. A Kyodai, who worked with you for 7 years, found dead in his apartment from a heart attack at 43. A Shate who killed himself in his car, no note, no explanation. Just the quiet extinction of a man who couldn't carry the burden anymore. You stand at their funerals and say nothing, because nothing you could say would capture what they meant, or what they lost. The clan takes care of their families. Envelopes of cash, assistance with housing, connections that help their children find legitimate employment. It's the closest thing to a pension plan that this world offers. But money doesn't replace a father, and connections don't explain to a child why daddy never came home. You carry these deaths, all of them. They live in the silences between your words and the space behind your eyes when you stare at nothing in particular. Your wife noticed years ago. She doesn't ask anymore. Wakagashira. It's just been abstracted. You don't hold the knife anymore, but the knife is still held. Somewhere tonight, one of your men is standing in a doorway, explaining consequences to someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them. The distance between you and the blood is measured in organizational charts and deniability, but the blood is still being spilled. You maintain a house in Kamakura. Traditional architecture, ocean view, garden that your wife tends while you're in Tokyo managing an empire of shadows. You visit on weekends when operations permit. You sit on the veranda and drink tea and watch the waves, and try to remember what it felt like to be the street punk who found a business card in a ramen shop 30 years ago. You can't remember. That person doesn't exist anymore. He was burned away layer by layer until only this remained. A man who commands armies and moves billions of yen and makes decisions that ripple across industries and nations. You command an army. You move billions of yen, and sitting alone on your veranda in Kamakura, watching the waves, you realize the street punk who started this journey felt more alive than you do now. Kumicho, the supreme leader. After your predecessor passed quietly in a hospital bed, one of the lucky ones who died of natural causes, the succession was smoother than anyone expected. You had built the relationships, earned the respect, eliminated or marginalized the competitors. When the time came, the Council of Senior Members confirmed what everyone already knew. You are the clan. The entire organization moves at your word. Thousands of members across dozens of crews, controlling legitimate businesses worth billions of yen and illegitimate operations worth more. Your decisions determine which industries the clan invests in, which politicians receive support, which territories expand, and which contract. You are, in effect, the CEO of a shadow empire that has existed for over a century. The government knows who you are. The police know where you live. Journalists have written books about you. But knowing and proving are different things, and you have spent a lifetime ensuring that no evidence connects you to anything actionable. The layers between your office and the street are deep and numerous. The legal team the clan retains is among the best in Japan. The political relationships you've cultivated provide warning when enforcement actions are being planned. You meet with cabinet ministers, with presidents of major corporations, with leaders of allied clans in formal ceremonies where sake is exchanged and ancient protocols are observed. You've become a pillar of a certain kind of establishment, the shadow establishment that exists beneath the official one, older and in some ways more stable. But the weight is extraordinary. Every death in the clan is your responsibility. Every operation that goes wrong, every member who is arrested, the last one standing from that original photograph. And soon, you won't be standing either. The clan will continue. It continued before you, and it will continue after. That's the closest thing to peace this life offers. Retirement in the Yakuza is not retirement in the civilian sense. You don't file paperwork and start collecting a pension. You recede. You become Katagi, a civilian, technically, while everyone who matters understands that you are never really out. The new Kumicho consults you on major decisions, not because he has to, but because your experience is irreplaceable and your relationships are still active. You're the guy who remembers where the bodies are, walking around in a body that still bears all the marks of what you were. You live quietly now. The Kamakura house full-time, your wife gardens, you read, you watch the news and see stories about Yakuza crackdowns and political corruption and corporate scandals, and you recognize names and connections that the journalists never fully understand. The iceberg beneath the surface that only those who swam in those waters can see. Sometimes former subordinates visit. They bring gifts and sit with you and drink tea and discuss the world in careful language that never quite says what it means. You advise when asked. Mostly you listen. The clan's problems are no longer your problems. The weight has been lifted or at least transferred to younger shoulders. The marks don't fade. Tattoos that exile you from every public bath in Japan. Scars that predict rain better than any forecast. And the 3 a.m. visitors. Faces that show up uninvited. Men you killed. Men you ordered killed. Men who died in rooms you never entered because of words you said in rooms you did. You tried therapy once. Sat in a clean office across from a woman with a notepad who asked you to describe your feelings. You almost laughed. How do you describe 50 years in a world she doesn't know exists? You didn't go back. Now you stand in grocery store lines, an old man buying vegetables. Behind you, someone complains about prices. Your mind drifts to the last time you watched a man lose his fingers. A Tuesday. Raining. He screamed for about 30 seconds. The woman ahead of you pays with exact change. You step forward. Buy your vegetables. Walk home. The two worlds don't fit together. You stop trying to make them. The only people who understand are the others like you. Former bosses and lieutenants, scattered across Japan, living quiet lives with loud pasts. You meet them occasionally, in restaurants that provide private rooms where old men with hidden tattoos can eat and drink without being photographed. You talk about the old days, but only in the vague way of men who know that specifics could still cause problems. Mostly, you sit together in comfortable silence, because the silence itself is a form of communication that only you can understand. Your children have built lives in the legitimate world. They're successful in careers that have nothing to do with the clan, and they've raised your grandchildren to be even further removed. This is, in its way, your greatest achievement, breaking the cycle, at least for your own bloodline. The family business will not be inherited by your family, but the business itself will continue. It always does. Right now, in a pachinko parlor in Kabukicho, a young man with fast hands and empty eyes is catching the attention of someone who matters. He's 23. He dropped out of high school and spent 5 years building a resume of minor crimes and major violence. He's good at hurting people. He's better at not getting caught. He's learned to survive in an environment that consumes most people who enter it, and that survival has made him visible. A man in an expensive suit is watching him from across the room, evaluating, calculating, wondering if this particular young man has what the clan needs. The young man doesn't know this is happening. He's just trying to get through another night, collect another debt, avoid another confrontation with the cops who pretend not to see him. He doesn't know that he's being auditioned for a role in an organization that has existed since before his grandparents were born. He wants what all the Chinpira want: the money, the respect, the fear in people's eyes when they realize who they're dealing with. He's seen the senior Yakuza in their expensive suits, driving their German cars, commanding tables at restaurants where the staff bows. He wants that life. He wants to matter. He doesn't know what it costs. He doesn't know about the Sakazuki ceremony, where he'll drink sake and surrender his identity to a family that will own him until he dies. He doesn't know about the operations at 2 a.m., the knives in the dark, the decisions made in fractions of seconds that will haunt him for decades. He doesn't know about the yubitsume, the severed finger he'll offer to atone for a failure that wasn't even his fault. He doesn't know about the tattoos that will cover his body and exile him from normal society forever. He doesn't know about the marriages that collapse under the weight of secrets, the children who grow up without fathers who are present even when they're physically there, the funerals for men who died too young in circumstances that can never be fully explained, the walls with photographs of faces that used to be alive. He doesn't know about the grocery store moments, standing in line with ordinary people, unable to reconcile the banality of vegetable prices with the violence of his actual life. He doesn't know about the 3 a.m. memories, the faces that never fade, the weight that never lifts. He doesn't know about the old men in the private restaurant rooms, sitting in silence because words can never capture what they've experienced. He doesn't know about the Kamakura houses and the ocean views and the gardens tended by wives who have waited decades for husbands who will never fully return. He doesn't know any of this, and even if someone told him, he wouldn't believe it, because men like him never do. Men like him walk toward the fire because something inside them needs to know if they're strong enough to survive the flames. The man in the expensive suit makes a decision. He walks across the pachinko parlor and says something quiet to the young man. Perhaps a compliment, perhaps an observation, perhaps just the address and time of a meeting that will change everything. The young man will go. They always go. The clan will evaluate him, test him, break him down and rebuild him into something the daylight world has no name for. If he survives, and most don't, he'll spend the next 40 years in the shadows, building a life that can never be acknowledged and accumulating damage that will never fully heal. And decades from now, when he's old and marked and tired, he'll sit in a private room with other survivors and watch the cycle begin again. A new young man with fast hands and empty eyes, a new man in an expensive suit, a new business card with no name. The cycle never breaks. The Yakuza has existed for over 300 years, adapting to every change in Japanese society, surviving every crackdown and reform effort, evolving from samurai-era gambling operators to modern corporate criminals. The names change, the faces change, the methods evolve. But the fundamental structure, the loyalty, the hierarchy, the silence, the violence, remains constant. The young man in the pachinko parlor doesn't know he's about to become part of something ancient and terrible and impossible to escape. He just knows the time and place of a meeting. He'll show up. They always do. The cycle begins again.